One thing I like to do when I am editing some video that's going to require some pretty serious rendering, uh, and I may not have time or disk space on my side or other factors, is I like to, um, I don't have background rendering on right now, and I usually don't. Um, I usually don't render everything before I edit. Some people won't be able to do that, but in this video, I'll just show you what I mean. Let me move this up a little bit, get the timeline up in there. Okay, there we go. All right, all right. A little bit laggy with the screen record. So as you can see, this part's blacked out. The reason that is because if I go and enable all this, there we go. I've never done too much I haven't done too much screen recording while doing this. So if I go that, look at all that is enabled. And I don't want to render all that because it's going to take up a lot of disk space. I think I've got 16 gigs left on my external solid state, and then I'm going to render out to a disk that has about 250 gigabytes free, which is plenty, but basically I only want to render the parts of this video that are really intensive. So for example, using this technique for my Savage HyperX SSD review, I blacked out the spots that I didn't need to render right away, and I rendered the high intensity stuff, as I like to put it. Some of these 3D titles, even if they don't really move, like a lot of the ones I love to use, really are just crazy in terms of computing power. Um, just like that right there, that little title right there, uh, took a lot of processing power in space. So I'm going to go ahead and disable that again. Oh, I didn't get them all. Let's see. Okay, so I guess I'll render that out. Um, uh, disk space below, a little bit low. So again, if I wanted to selectively render out something that was maybe intensive and just wait for the final export to render the rest, I might just go like this. Let's all the way down on that. Gonna need this. Break it up into little pieces is what I usually do. So blade tool right here. That way I can really hopefully try and, let's see, let me try that again. That blade tool is going to come in handy. All right. See, so now I can, oh no, let's get that in the mix. So disable that. All right, and now I have just this portion of video, or of the timeline, I should say. That this part is just going to be rendered, and once it gets to that, it ignores it. So, and I did color correct this. Thought I color corrected this one. Let's just do that really quick for you guys. Nothing big here. Bump the saturation. I left Sin Style up on my Canon 550D. So what happened was that flat profile kind of kept. So there's really no contrast in the CR2s, and I didn't feel like adding a new profile for whatever reason. I just kind of batch processed them into TIFFs. Okay, so that's mostly fixed. Okay, And now we're just going to go to render. So I'm going to end the video before I go to render, otherwise the frame rate of the video will drop. So yeah, so I'm going to click background render and I'll let it do its thing. You can see I rendered that out. My background rendering disabled now. I had it enabled, so I let that render. And now it's you don't see that orange bar anymore. So it's really chunk rendering. I guess that's the method I'm going to use. That's very nice. It would be nice if it was, if there was something in the manual, so to speak, or if I saw a little bit more of this being shared, because it's very useful. Sometimes it'd be nice if you could just, right-click this and hit render. um, I'm not sure why that's not a thing, but whatever. I've discovered my own way. Okay, so I'm getting towards the point of being able to finally export this out and let it render out onto the much larger disk drive that I use as kind of another scratch disk in addition to the solid state I have. So what I'm going to do is, and there's still a little, this needs to be rendered. It's just a small piece. Won't be that difficult to render on export. So I am going to go out and obviously enable all this. Hopefully I got it all. And I like to, when I enable and disable, I like to make sure there wasn't anything that I had disabled because I was trying to get rid of it. And if there was something that I had disabled because I really wanted to delete it, make sure I go in and delete it if I can, or move it or something. So always remember that, because when you start toggling disable and enable, there might be some stuff that you wanted to hide that might end up in your final render. I found that with some of the audio in this, and hopefully when I render this out one last time, it won't end up in the final upload. But as you can see, there's a bunch of orange here, and a lot of it's just screen recording stuff, which I found renders just fine. My background is probably the to blame for all this intensive rendering. That orange background right there. So yeah, most of this stuff that has yet to be rendered is in the middle of the video. Actually, all of it's in the middle of the video, and it's just some of the benchmark stuff on the video. So with that said, I think it's all set to render out. So I will get to that. As you can see, my hard drive space is starting to dwindle, so I do want to get this off my computer as soon as possible onto the external. So that is chunk rendering, as I call it. I'm sure someone smarter than me has a better term. Maybe Apple or the designers of Final Cut Pro have a better term, but that's what I call it. So I'm going to actually get ready to render this out. Hopefully it works. Thanks for watching. Thing before I go, I really like the latest Final Cut Pro X features of finally allowing me to do custom frame sizes, because I like to do a lot of my video in between 2K and 4K, that is to say 3K. 1440p, I use that a lot, and it is a lot easier to edit at 1440p. Here, as you can see, this is a 1440p 16 by 9 24 FPS stereo project, than it is to do a 4K one. Believe me, it's even if you cut the resolution in half and then change it last minute, it's just easier. The only problem I find is I like to do 48 FPS a lot, so I end up doing a lot of stuff in a 50 FPS timeline, and then exporting with a custom compressor preset that really doesn't do the best job. But since it's a 2 FPS difference, I guess my point is I really hope Apple would add 48 FPS to uh, the list of options for frame rates. I don't know why this is such a difficult thing for other um, companies to do as well. I know for The Hobbit, when they did it in 48 FPS, they had to use a custom Adobe Premiere Pro timeline or something crazy like that. I just think it's strange. I mean, you just double 24 or take 2 frames off of 50. I'm sure it's more complex than that, but I mean, if we're in the digital era now, we don't have to worry about uh, as much as back in the day, so to speak. um, I mean, if we can do 24p, true 24p, 23976, 50, 5994, whatever, all the other stuff, then we should be able to get 48. So that's just one of my complaints. And I will be uploading this video in 48 or 50 frames a second, depending on how um, nice this wants to play with me. So if you can, um, try looking at the 48 frames version of this video. Probably not too much of a difference, although the mouse is going to look smoother versus the 24 frames a second version, or the 30 or 25 frames a second version. Um, so, and if you can, to other content creators, push your boundaries with your tutorials a little bit. I always hate when I see uh, tutorials and they're great and it's a full screen and it's in 720p. It's like I can't see anything. I can't see the details in the text, and over time YouTube kind of degrades your video, so the more you put in terms of, the video upload, the longer it seems to hang on. Like I upload the whole ProRes file onto YouTube. Um, there's some mixed results. It takes longer, although I have fast internet, so not too much of a problem. And it takes a while to process, but um, I feel it's the best quality. Now, for uploading ProRes, I wouldn't go higher than regular ProRes or ProRes HQ. Personally, I just make a ProRes LT file for YouTube. ProRes 444, I get all the fours in there, may have an alpha channel. That may screw things up. The fact that it's 12-bit may screw things up. I have experimented with uploading ProRes 444 with an alpha channel and without one in the past, and the results were kind of mixed. It'll process it, but sometimes not at full resolution, sometimes only at half resolution. Sometimes things get out of sync. So stay in the ProRes 422 family for that. But really put 1440p content, 3K, 4K content, 48, 50, 60 FPS content. It really helps for me. I'm kind of a tech nerd, so I kind of do it intentionally, but I think it ends up looking good and the videos hold up long term. Thanks for listening to me sort of rant there on tech specs.